Hey, welcome to HailChatter. We appreciate you joining us for our fall season of HailChatter, where we have talked about hurricanes, and we're going to talk more about hurricanes and some of the people that chase hurricanes, some of the people who are scientists that get up in these really cool planes. They're called hurricane hunters. But before we get into that, I want to introduce our guest today, Dan Stechman, who is the Meteorological Software Engineer here at HailTrace. And for short, if you can't say all of that, it is quite a mouthful. You can call him Dr. Dan, because Dan, you are a doctor, right?
Yes. I got my PhD at the University of Illinois. Went there from 2013 to 2018. Also got my master's. And then I came to Oklahoma back in 2018 to work down at the Weather Center in Norman.
The best place for weather, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because there are so many meteorologists around you 24/7, and there's so many opportunities there as well to study different types of weather. So tell us what you did while you were in Norman.
Yeah, so I actually continued some research that I had started during my PhD, which was analyzing nocturnal thunderstorms, so storms happening overnight. And that was actually the first time that I got to fly in one of the hurricane hunters. But not into a hurricane.
That was my next question.
Yeah, it was actually into one of these huge nighttime thunderstorm complexes that we call MCSs.
Okay, so I'll pause you right there, just because anyone who doesn't know, the most dangerous tornado that we can have is often at night, because you can't see it coming. It's extremely difficult to identify exactly what is happening in the tornado. So you said, I'm going to go into this, but I'm not going to do it at the ground. I'm going to do it in a plane.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, just making sure that we have this right here.
So, I actually got a nice mix of the ground-based and the airborne stuff during that project. So got to drive around in a radar for the summer and operate that. But then I got, that one experience early on in my career to go up and fly into one of these storms at night, which was so cool.
And you said a hurricane hunter plane. You said it's the type of plane that actually goes into hurricanes.
Yep.
You're in a tornado. Tell us more about that.
Sure. Yeah. So NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they have a whole fleet of aircraft that's operated out of their Aircraft Operations Center in Lakeland, Florida. And among those aircraft are two P-3 aircraft, which were actually originally submarine hunters for the Navy, if you can believe that.
And tell us about that, because you said they used to drop
torpedoes instead of dropsons. Dropsons are these instrumented packages that they drop in tubes into the hurricane to measure pressure, temperature, winds, humidity, and that sort of thing.
So instead, we were kind of joking beforehand. They took these war vehicles essentially that were hunting submarines.
Yeah.
And we were like, hang on, what if we put some meteorological devices on there and we can measure the temperature and the dew point?
Exactly.
And that's exactly what happened,
let's
right?
fly into a hurricane. That's a great idea. But, they've actually, it's surprisingly very safe. To my understanding, there haven't really been any, disasters or mishaps. There have been some close calls, but, that's kind of the way things are with weather and aviation, especially combined like this.
No, that makes sense. Now, whenever they first told you that you would have this opportunity, what was your first reaction?
Oh, I was so excited.
Yeah.
It's kind of an odd thing because I'm terrified of heights, but I love flying. I don't know what it is. If you asked me to jump out of that plane, it would be a different story.
I think a lot of people could relate to that sentiment.
Yeah, but being able to get up into the sky and get that perspective on the weather, especially, in that first case where we were flying into these storms, you have lightning all around you, it's dark, it's wild. And later on, when I moved to Norman, I took part in a couple of field projects where we studied tornadoes using those planes. And that project was called TORUS. Targeted Observations by UAS. Oh gosh, I always forget the acronym. Us scientists and acronyms are...
Meteorologists, we love an acronym. Yeah. We'll stick a word in there just to make it a nice acronym.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll design the name of our experiments around the acronym that we want.
I love it. There's a research going on right now called IceChip, and it studies hail. And I love that they used that last word is an acronym, CHIP, C-H-I-P, and I don't know what it stands for, but I thought it was very, very creative that they said IceChip. We study hail. Makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
So on the data that you're collecting, so you do two projects, right? PECAN and TORUS. What kind of, was there any breakthrough research that was done on that? Was there anything that we now understand about tornadoes that you guys were part of that project?
So a lot of this research is actually still ongoing. So, these projects, they take several years to complete and just gather the data in the first place. We're talking, 10 to 20 agencies all coming together and working together and collecting data. And then you all go back home and you start sifting through that data. It's not like in Twisters, unfortunately, with, the pod rads where they instantly have a 3-dimensional picture of the tornado. The science and the math is still basically the same, but we're not to that level yet. So that being said, there's papers actively coming out, scientific research being published, some of which I've had the pleasure of being involved in. And it's really right now about just filling in these gaps in our knowledge about what happens nearest the surface. Because those are the areas where obviously humans, we live closest to the surface. But it's also the hardest place to accurately measure these small scale weather features.
And why is that?
Well, radars, for example, are our main tool for remotely measuring weather. So that you don't have to be in it. You can just shoot it with energy and you get back information, and we use that. With radars, we can only see so close to the surface because the radar beam is actually angled upward like this. And so as you get further and further away from the radar, what you're measuring is much higher above the ground, which is relevant, but it doesn't give us clues into what's actually happening near the surface, which is actually where we believe tornado genesis begins, is actually from the ground up.
Surface-based. That makes sense. Okay, so in the planes with you, we're going to go back, take us back up in the air, back into the planes. There's a lot of different people in there. Tell us who is in the planes with you.
Sure. Yeah, so they have a whole flight crew. I think generally, it's been a few years since I've flown with them, but I want to say we had about 12 people. That consists of 3 to 4 people in the cockpit, including the pilots, systems engineers. They also have somebody specifically for navigation and interfacing with air traffic control. And then you have scientists like myself on board. Typically, there are only 2 to 3 of us at a time, just because seat availability. And then you also have a whole host of systems engineers, technicians, all working to make sure that all the instrumentation is operational, that the plane is operational and safe. And they all work together in concert to get us the best science possible.
Did you say before that there were hurricane hunters, people who had that hurricane hunter experience on board with you as well?
Yep, almost exclusively, yeah. So they support not only hurricane research during hurricane season, but outside of that, these aircraft can be used for other research, like in my case, the tornado research. And so they get this experience of being able to not only fly into hurricanes regularly, but to go experience all these other cool phenomena. And I'll never forget the first time that I actually was able to see a tornado from one of these planes. The whole flight crew was just ecstatic. It was really funny to me because, I feel like I'd be exactly the same if it were me flying into a hurricane for the first time. But for them, it's just commonplace. And, obviously I had never seen a tornado from the air before they had either. But I don't know. It was just really interesting, really cool to be a part of something that even to these guys and gals that, literally fly into some of the biggest and strongest storms on Earth, we're still excited and surprised by something like it. It was nice. It was cool.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah.
In comparison to that hurricane, they saw this tornado and they were like, Whoa, wow.
Yeah. Everybody had their phones out. At one point, I went into the cockpit and nobody had. I think somebody had their hands on the yoke. They had to, but everybody had their phones up and they were looking out the window.
That's really cool.
So yeah, it was so cool. And I have some pictures as well that I can share with you. Unfortunately, my station on the plane was never positioned to get the best shots because it's just how it was. So I relied on the others to get me the cool footage.
We're going to need those photos. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that we need to convince Derek to have a Hailstalker, but aircraft version.
Oh, absolutely.
Storm chase with.
Yes, I am all about that. I can help spin that program up for you guys.
Here, Derek just walked in. Actually, Derek, would you get up in one of those Hurricane Hunter planes with Dan?
All day long, every day.
He says all day long, every day.
Well, I'm going to do my best to see if I can't make that happen. We'll see.
I love that. Okay, we're talking about it now. It's going to happen. I believe it.
Exactly. Put it out there. It'll happen.
So you're taking these flights. You said you're nervous kind of getting in these flights, although you enjoy flying. Because that was my first thought on this is, okay, getting an aircraft and flying towards a storm, whether it's a hurricane or in this case in a tornado, seems counterintuitive. There was a time I was thinking of last year. There was an EF2 tornado, February of 2024. And I'm sitting there in their airport in Chicago, and the tornado is nearby, and the wind is picking up, and I'm on that tube of a plane, and it's rocking back and forth, and everything in me was like, okay, I don't want to be here. I want to be off this aircraft. And so actually taking off and flying towards our tornadoes, or at least flying towards that storm, is, I mean, a lot of turbulence. I mean, what type of experience is it to be in an aircraft?
So I'll start, with the initial flight prep and planning. That starts several days before, in terms of deciding whether we're going to, even pursue a mission. But the day of, if we've decided to try to target a specific area, we'll usually get together 2 to 3 hours ahead of the expected takeoff time. And they have a whole team of people that do flight briefings, flight prep. They check weather and any other hazardous conditions that may exist. So specific to hurricanes, which never applied to us when we were doing our tornado research, was they consider stuff like volcanic ash and sea spray, because that all has impacts on the engines and on flight in general. So they're very, very well prepared. They have procedures in place that really severely, I don't think severe is the right word, greatly mitigate the risks that we would face in doing these things. Now, actually getting up and flying into the storms wasn't as bad as I expected it to be in terms of turbulence. At least that very first experience flying in that thunderstorm complex, you'd have moments of chop, definitely more than you would have in a commercial flight. But it was surprisingly chill. However, this tornado project, the TORUS project, which we deployed in 2 separate years, 2019 and 2022, obviously you can't fly even these hurricane hunters into supercell thunderstorms because they're much too powerful. Updrafts are far too strong. It's very dangerous. You need special aircraft for that, which currently don't exist. But so we'd fly typically 10 to 15 kilometers out ahead of the storm, ahead of the leading flank. And the goal was to scan these storms with the onboard radars. So sticking out the back of the P3 planes and a couple of their other planes as well, they have what's called a tail Doppler radar, which actually has 2 separate radar antennas in there, both transmitting facing in opposite directions. So you're kind of sweeping out like a helix as you fly through the storm. And then we can use all that data after the fact to come up with some really interesting analyses on these storms.
And to give people an idea of these radars that are on the back of the plane, if you've ever seen the movie Twisters and you saw them pull the radar out of the back of their truck and set it up and get information on the tornado that was coming towards them. It's essentially the same idea, that it's a mobile radar that is on the back of the plane that can scan and get information on the storm that's behind you, that you're flying just ahead of. So another thing that I wanted to talk about, in your career, you've been in NOAA for a long time. Mm-hmm. How long exactly?
Officially, I had been affiliated with NOAA since 2018. So I graduated with my PhD in 2018. I moved to Oklahoma from Illinois, where I was going to grad school. And I officially worked for, at the time, what was called the Cooperative Institute for Mesoscale Meteorological Studies, or SIMS.
SIMS, right? Yeah.
And in doing that work, there's tons of these cooperative institutes throughout the country that work. It's a way for universities to work hand in hand with NOAA and the National Weather Service. And so I worked as a part of that cooperative institute, and worked very closely with scientists at the National Severe Storms Lab. And so that's, where all these opportunities to actually get up and fly and do this research came from. And eventually SIMS actually changed, same mission and modified mission, different name. It became the Cooperative Institute for Severe and High Impact Weather Research and Operations.
That is a mouthful.
It's so much. And it's pronounced CERO. And so...
Easy to say
that. Yeah. And so basically, I got to be just about as involved in NOAA as I could be without being a federal scientist myself.
Now, during, we see these happen all the time where, NOAA is a government agency. And so a lot of government activities will directly impact their operations
Sure.
at anywhere in NOAA, often at the National Weather Service level, and then in different research levels as well. Talk about that experience from what you saw being so closely affiliated with government workers at that time and what they were going through, and how that impacted you guys as well.
Sure. Yeah. And back in 2013, I was actually finishing up my undergraduate degree. So I wasn't quite yet involved with NOAA, but I was engaged enough in the community to kind of, see how it was affecting things. And the light bulb moment for me was, I had always had it in my head, I'm just going to get my bachelor's degree and I'm going to go work for the Weather Service as a forecaster. But the moment that kind of changed that was one of my professors decided that he wanted to actually go work for the Weather Service. This guy, he has a PhD from OU in meteorology, super well versed, one of the best teachers I've ever had. And the end result of all that was he got an intern position in Montana.
With a PhD.
With a PhD.
Wow.
And so here I am wrapping up my bachelor's. And this was actually in my junior year. So it was 2012. It was before the official hiring freeze, but it was headed that way. And I was like, man, if this man who is so knowledgeable and so reputable could only get an internship, like I don't have a chance. Like I don't want to say I panicked, but I was like, well, I gotta find a different career path.
I think that would be understandable at that time to say, if this guy who has so much experience can only get an internship position, then what am I going to get?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And with that only being able to get internship position, was that just the norm, or was that because of the hiring freeze that was coming, or?
It might have been a combination. I'm kind of speaking a little bit to stuff that I don't fully understand. I believe that any new forecaster that comes onto the Weather Service probably starts in some form of an internship position.
Yeah.
But that being said, like the fact that they were only taking, these super experienced people with PhDs and not people fresh out of undergrad was really the concerning thing for me.
So this then initiated, you said you wanted to go get your master's now.
Yes.
And so you go get your master's.
Yep. Yeah. I met with somebody at the University of Illinois. His name is Bob Rauber. great guy. And he convinced me that, I was bright enough to handle grad school. And he was like, yeah, come on for your master's. It'll be a lot of fun. And oh, by the way, I'm doing this field project called PECAN, which we talked about. So if you decide you want to stay for your PhD, I bet we could get you on that. I'm like,
cool.
I was, 2 days ago, I was just going to get my bachelor's. I don't know about PhD, guys.
You're like, how many years is that?
But, here we are. I had a great support team in grad school, including Bob. And I've kind of lost track of what we were talking about.
Well, I want to go back. I did want to bring us back to the hiring freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
So you saw this happen with a very, very experienced, very influential, and well-respected person in the meteorological field, and they got an internship position. Yeah. Tell us, that was before the hiring freeze even started. So take us through the next few months of what you saw as we were headed into this hiring freeze.
Well, I for sure saw a lot of my friends that, decided to continue on that path that I was on, not have as much success. A few people managed to sneak into internship positions with the Weather Service. But by and large, it was that or you go into academia. So like research, like what I ended up doing, or find a position in private sector, like with HailTrace.
So those are for people coming out of college. They had to pivot in some way. What about the people in the National Weather Service or in NOAA at the time?
Right. Well, it's my understanding that similar to today, though probably not quite as extreme, they had to learn to work with less. And they still had the passion to help people and protect lives and property, which is the Weather Service's mission. And so they made things work, and they still managed to deliver. I fear now that a lot of areas of meteorology are being negatively impacted by what's happening, with budgets and programs. And it's unfortunately not going to affect just the government. I mean, the weather enterprise is so interwoven between industry, research, and universities and the government. And if we go pulling one of those linchpins out, like, I don't know what's going to happen.
That's exactly where I was going with this. That was back in 2013. So fast forward 12 years later, and we're kind of back in a very, very similar spot where we're not quite sure where this goes from here. Can you speak to what we have seen so far and where you think this is going?
Yeah. So far we've seen a lot of staffing cuts within the Weather Service and in other agencies as well related to the weather. And one of the most tangible effects of that is we've started losing weather balloon launches. And by that, I mean, these offices aren't fully staffed enough to support launching the typical 2-a-day weather balloons. And that, to maybe the average person, that doesn't sound like a big deal. Oh, we're not sending a balloon up in the air quite as often. Everywhere.
Well, and I have to say, like the terminology that we're using here, it sounds like, a weather balloon. It can't be that important. It's a balloon, but that's fun. That has a different type of, what's the right word there? That has a different type of relation in the words that we use. Like a balloon sounds happy and fun. It doesn't sound like this extremely scientific and very important technology for us. But there is a lot of information that we get from these weather balloons, including temperature, dew point, pressure, and a vertical structure as it goes throughout the atmosphere. And that not only helps us for forecasting, but also understanding what is happening right now, which then helps forecasting as well and figuring out what's going to happen in the future.
Exactly.
I cut you off. Go ahead.
You're fine. So, I mean, with all of that information gets fed into, the various forecast models, of which we have quite a few. And if you go removing some of that information, we're losing context for what the atmosphere looks like right now. And the atmosphere is a very chaotic system, and it's really hard to predict a chaotic system like that, especially as you go out in time. So if you start with, there's a saying, garbage in, garbage out. And the idea is if you feed in garbage data or not enough data, you can't expect to get something better than what you put in out of it. And so we're limiting what we're giving our computer models in terms of like a first guess at what the atmosphere looks like. And so it makes total sense that, we might be seeing some accuracy issues, whereas we didn't 6 months ago. Now, if we keep losing weather balloon launches, I imagine that'll degrade further. And from there, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have seen some of this funding being taken away and then being given back or maybe redistributed in a different way. Mm-hmm. And it, to me, even as a meteorologist, feels very confusing and very chaotic. Now, you're a little bit closer to the situation because you do have that experience. Is that the same way that you feel?
Oh, absolutely.
Or, yeah.
And that's been my impression from, friends and past colleagues that I've kept in touch with that are still in NOAA or the cooperative institutes. It's a lot of uncertainty day to day. And for the most part, it sounds like folks are trying to, do the best they can with what they have. But, it's a very stressful situation for all of them. And I really feel for them. And I just hope that we can all get through to the other side of this. And
I did want to ask, what is the general sentiment from people that you talk to whenever we talk about not quite knowing what's going to happen in the next hour or the next day? They go to work not knowing if they're going to have a job the next day. What is the overall sentiment there?
It's very disheartening. And for many meteorologists, myself included, our passion for the weather started when we were kids. And so, for me, I learned what the National Severe Storms Lab was when I watched Twister, the original Twister, when I was 7 years old. And so when I got to work there, just mind-blowing. And so the folks that are there now, their dreams are, kind of filling out, and they're seeing all their hard work come to fruition. But now there's all this talk and actual action of dismantling a lot of, what they built their careers on. So it's very scary. And I know that a lot of folks are very burned out. And honestly, a number of them, and I can't say I blame them, are just going to try to continue like business as usual. Because, the average person doesn't have necessarily the power to change this particular situation.
Well, and I know that meteorologists are very hardworking people. We persevere and we power through just to get through those terrible, in my opinion, math classes. You have to be a very hardworking person.
Yes.
So, I do think that we have a community that will work very, very hard with whatever situation that they're given. What would you say to people who have the argument of just because it's the way that we've always done things isn't the way that we should be doing it now?
In terms of arguing for the changes that we're seeing, that can be a difficult one because, it can be dangerous to be set in your ways in anything. And you can limit innovation. But I do think that there's a certain way to go about, these kind of changes. And the way that it's happened this go around has perhaps been too chaotic and not as well thought out. Could there be changes, to make things more efficient within the Weather Service and research? Absolutely. But I don't know that the right way to do that is how it's currently been executed.
Well, and we'll be watching that very closely over the next few months. So we'll see what happens as our industry continues to pivot with these changes. We appreciate you being here today. Is there anything that we haven't asked you yet that you think is important?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we talked a lot about kind of what's happening in the current situation. And I think that it's really important to drive home to, everybody that consumes weather data in any way to understand that the vast majority of that data comes from our government. And HailTrace is not immune. A lot of our data comes directly from NOAA products. And so it's important to all of us, to business, industry, and the average person, that we make sure that we maintain these systems and give them what they need.
And in that, you're referring to all of the Mesonet data out there, all of the radars that we have out there.
Model data, satellite data, everything that tells us what's happening in our atmosphere.
That's the infrastructure. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you, Colin.
Well, Dan, thanks for joining us for this podcast. It was a really awesome podcast and insightful. Some really cool pictures there, getting to see you be able to chase these storms in an aircraft. And for those of you watching, if you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with a friend.
Yeah, and we'll be back 2 Tuesdays from now. We're out every other Tuesday on all Apple, Spotify, and YouTube devices, platforms. So wherever you get your podcast, you can check us out there.